Today, we are diving deep into the ancient text of Deuteronomy. We're catching up with Moses, who's standing right on the edge of the Promised Land, and he's about to lay out this incredible blueprint for a just and faithful society. And let me tell you, this is way more than just a list of rules. It's a vision for the very soul of a nation.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're breaking the whole thing down into 5 key sections. We're going to see exactly how this vision for a new nation gets built, piece by piece, from its deepest beliefs all the way to its economic policies. So everything kicks off with chapter 11, and this is the absolute foundation of the entire covenant. It's a powerful, powerful call to love God, and it's all rooted in one simple command: remember. Moses is just begging the people to remember God's incredible power. You know, the plagues in Egypt, splitting the Red Sea, how they were kept alive in the wilderness.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Moses creates this amazing metaphor. See, in Egypt, farming was all about irrigation you controlled with your foot. It was all about human effort, human control. But the Promised Land, it's different. It drinks water of the rain of heaven. This makes them totally dependent on God's care. It's this physical picture of a spiritual truth, a huge shift from self-reliance to God-reliance. That's an idea that still really challenges our modern desire to control absolutely everything.
And this all boils down to the central theme of the chapter. The choice is laid out with, honestly, terrifying clarity. There is no gray area here. Obey God's commands and you get a blessing. Timely rains, a land that flourishes. Disobey and you get a curse. The heavens shut up and prosperity just withers away. The land itself becomes this kind of barometer for the people's faithfulness.
So, and this is crucial, this choice isn't some one-time decision you make and then forget about. No, it demands constant, active remembrance. These words, these commands, were meant to be literally woven into the fabric of their lives, on their bodies, in their homes, and drilled into their children. It's a call to make faith a conscious, daily practice, not something you just say for one day a week.
Moving on to chapter 12, you can see how the blueprint builds on itself. So once that foundation of love and obedience is set, Moses gets specific about how and where that devotion should be expressed. This chapter is all about a total transformation of their worship.
And the whole thing really boils down to this 2-part command. First, a radical, no-compromise break from all the local pagan stuff. Just get rid of it. Second, a radical centralization. Instead of worshiping wherever you want, all sacrifices have to be brought to the one place God will choose. This created unity, it created focus, which is a pretty stark contrast to our modern world, where our attention is pulled in a million different directions, right?
Now, tucked inside these new rules is one key distinction. They can now eat meat just for a normal meal, anywhere they live. But there's a strict rule: you cannot eat the blood. And why? Because, as the text says, the blood is the life. Life is sacred, it belongs to God, so the blood has to be poured out on the ground, basically returned to its source.
Okay, so you've got the rules for worship down, but what about the biggest threat from the inside? That's what chapter 13 is all about, the temptation to abandon God and worship idols. This chapter is a pretty sobering look at how to guard their collective loyalty.
I mean, think about this scenario for a second. It's intense. What if a prophet performs a legit miracle, but then uses that credibility to lead you astray? The text gives a pretty shocking answer. This is a test from God Himself to find out if you really love Him with all your heart. The message is so powerful. Truth is measured by faithfulness to God's character, not just by supernatural signs or some charismatic personality. And the text identifies 3 potential sources of the spiritual poison, and the list is, well, it's chilling. It could be a public figure. It could be the most intimate relationship you have: your brother, your wife, your best friend. Or it could be an entire city that just goes completely off the rails. And in every single case, the command is the same. Your loyalty to God has to override every other loyalty, no matter how much you love them. Now, the punishments described for leading people into idolatry are severe, but the purpose wasn't just about punishment. It was about deterring the whole community. By removing the evil from the midst, the entire nation would hear and fear and be warned against turning away. It's a view of justice that's not just about punishing, but also about preventing and teaching the whole society.
So, from these big, heavy laws, we zoom right in on the details of daily life in chapter 14. How do you actually live like a set-apart people? This is where the covenant identity gets really practical.
And this right here is the principle behind all the laws in this chapter. The word holy just means set apart for a special purpose. They were chosen to be a peculiar people, which doesn't mean weird, it means a treasured possession. So their whole lifestyle, even what they ate, was meant to be a living, breathing reflection of this unique status. It was a form of countercultural identity. And of course, this is where we get the famous dietary laws. But listen, the point wasn't primarily about health or hygiene, not in the way we think about it today. It was about order and separation. By following these rules, the Israelites created this daily, practical distinction between themselves and their neighbors. It was a constant reminder of who they were called to be. And then you have this brilliant idea of the tithe. The annual tithe was meant for a huge, joyful party at the sanctuary. But every third year, that same tithe was kept at home to provide for the most vulnerable people in society. It's this beautiful system that basically says your worship and your social justice have to be connected. You can't have one without the other.
And that brings us to the final piece of the blueprint, chapter 15. This is where all these ideas get woven directly into the economic fabric of the nation. It's about designing a society where compassion and justice are just part of the rhythm of life.
And the magic number here, it's 7. Just like the seventh day was a Sabbath of rest, the seventh year was to be a sabbatical year. It marked this holy cycle of rest and, this is the big one, release. It was designed to reorder the entire economy based on faith in God's provision. This is the principle of the Lord's release, and it is absolutely radical. Every 7 years, all debts between Israelites were just canceled, gone. This was a system-wide reset button on debt, designed to prevent the kind of long-term crushing poverty that could tear a community apart. I mean, it's an ancient idea that is a direct challenge to so many of our modern ideas about debt. And the motivation behind this is just so profoundly human. The text is realistic. It says, look, there are always going to be people in need, but that's not an excuse for inaction. It's the whole reason for the command, thou shalt open thine hand wide. This isn't about some grudging obligation. It's a call for proactive, open-hearted, just unstinting generosity.
And it all comes back to that one word again, remember. Why should they be so generous when they're freeing a servant? Because they have to remember that they themselves were slaves in Egypt, and God redeemed them. Their own history of redemption becomes the engine for their empathy. Their past pain is meant to fuel their present compassion.
So this incredibly detailed blueprint, covering everything from the inner choices of the heart to the outer structure of the economy, this was Israel's guide. And it leaves us with a final thought to chew on. How do these ancient principles of radical dependence, unified worship, absolute loyalty, and systemic generosity challenge our own ideas about what it means to build a just and faithful world today?